Hello, kia ora koutou. Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for joining today's session on media and information literacy. My name is Natasha Ratajik and I am the Schools Engagement Coordinator at the State Library of Queensland. I am joining you from Meanjin, Brisbane, on the lands of the Yagara and Turrbal people. On behalf of NSLA, I pay my respects to the traditional custodians and kaitiake of the many lands of which all of us here today live and work. We also welcome today's panelists, Anya Tate, Assistant Director from Libraries and Archives, Northern Territory. Anya, if you want to turn on your camera and say hello, and Libby Levitt from Children and Young People Services, Libraries Tasmania, along with Dr. Kylie Stevenson, the Associate Investigator with the Centre for the Digital Child, who will present to you shortly. Thank you. Before we kick off, just a few Zoom housekeeping instructions. To ask questions of your panelists, simply open the Q&A panel by clicking the icon at the bottom of your screen. To share thoughts or comments during the session, please use the chat function. Open the chat icon, select everyone or a specific panelist, add your comment and send enter. The chat is also being monitored, so if you encounter any technical issues, such as problems with sound, please put these into the chat. Any non-technical questions asked in the chat will be moved over to the Q&A. Today, our focus is on the crucial role libraries can play in supporting media and information literacy, particularly for families with young children in the early years. First, let me provide a little context for our discussion by providing a brief overview of media and information literacy, why it is a growing priority for libraries, and how the NSLA Learning Network arrived here today, leading this learning symposium. Earlier this year, the network gathered in Canberra to discuss how libraries can support the global need for media literacy and information literacy, equipping citizens with the skills for informed critical thinking. These discussions sparked the idea for this webinar series focused on exploring ways libraries can foster media literacy in children, young people, and their families. Here we are outside the Museum of Australian Democracy. As media and information literacy becomes an increasingly important priority, our aim is to leverage the strengths of libraries to support the communities we serve. Today, by sharing current library programs for children in the early years, focused on building foundational media literacies, we hope to inspire you to create or adopt similar initiatives to equip families with the skills to help their children navigate today's complex information landscape. So who is the NSLA Learning Network? We are comprised of representatives from all across Australasian state and territory libraries. As a collective, we focus on the development and delivery of programs that serve a wide range of audiences, including early learners, school-age students, and adults, which in every NSLA library looks different. A key part of our work is sharing our expertise and professional knowledge, as well as the projects that are benefiting our communities, allowing us to learn, support, and adopt from one another. In our roles, we also serve as critical friends to multiliteracy and learning programs across the network. Finally, we support NSLA libraries in their growth as learning organisations by modelling and nurturing a learning culture. This is central to ensuring that libraries continue to be spaces of innovation, knowledge sharing, and lifelong learning. We recognise that for many of us, media and information literacy skill building may still be a new focus or consideration for programming, and quite possibly the driver for your registrations today. We are not experts on every approach for integrating media and information literacy into your spaces, nor can we cover every example of how NSLA libraries are working to support media and information literacy skill building for the early years. And we acknowledge that many of you joining us today may be further ahead in this space than we are or have capacity to showcase today. And if that's the case, please share your experience into the chat as we proceed through today's webinar. However, we are committed to sharing, learning, and growing together as we explore how libraries across Australia can best support media and information literacy development to foster informed critical thinkers. So what is media and information literacy? This refers to the knowledge, attitudes, and skills needed to navigate today's complex information landscape. This includes accessing, evaluating, organizing, and using information ethically across different formats like print, digital, and recorded media. The goal is to empower individuals to engage critically with information and to use it in ways that promotes lifelong learning and informs citizenship. E. Courtney Rattray, the United Nations High Representative for the Least Developed Countries, Landlocked Developing Countries, and Small Island Developing States, has a focus on sustainable development and media literacy as part of his portfolio. In an article published by the United Nations Chronicle, he outlined the following mandate for media and information literacy. The mandate highlights the critical role media and information literacy plays in shaping responsible and informed citizens in this increasingly complex digital world. As we reflect on this, consider how you can apply these principles in your own programs to not only educate, but also empower families and young people to engage ethically with media, fostering a more informed and inclusive society. So why is it important? Well, media and information literacy is a fundamental right that promotes lifelong learning and social inclusion, empowering individuals to navigate digital environments safely and critically. It addresses challenges like misinformation and hate speech, fostering thoughtful, informed citizens. It helps to combat truth decay by balancing fast and slow thinking while encouraging curiosity and critical inquiry. In today's information-saturated world, algorithms often create echo chambers by reinforcing personal biases, leading to limited perspectives. Promoting media and information literacy is also a global priority, as outlined in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals 4, Quality Education, and 16, Peace, Justice, and Strong Institutions. Media and information literacy has become a key priority across all levels, with governments and organizations increasingly integrating it into school curricula, such as the new Australian Curriculum version 9.0 and other national frameworks. These efforts aim to equip students with the essential digital literacies and responsible media engagement skills to help them combat misinformation and foster informed citizenship. So why libraries? Why are we interested in this space? Well, libraries have long supported media literacy by acting as community hubs for lifelong learning, and as it is often said, from the cradle to the grave. We collaborate at global, national, and local levels to deliver literacy programs that support digital citizenship and critical thinking. We are guided by and provide input into policies and frameworks that benefit our audiences. These are just a few examples, including IFLA's Media and Information Literacy Recommendations and the Our National Agenda for Change, prepared by the Australian Media Literacy Alliance, of which ALIA and NSLA are members, and was further supported by a consultation report produced by the Australian Library and Information Association in 2023, the national peak body for libraries in Australia. And we'll share these links with you following the presentation. But where to begin? Well, now that I've given you a really good foundation on media information literacy, it's essential to address how to best implement programs and resources that build these skills effectively. The NSLA Learning Network reviewed a few different methodologies and frameworks when we were together in Canberra. We were looking for a good model for assessing and building media literacy skills in children and young people, and also one that could help libraries craft programs to foster critical thinking and responsible media engagement. We decided collectively that a great starting point is Edith Cowan University's model for children's digital citizenship, which focuses on 4 key areas: attitude, ability, awareness, and access, also known as the 4A's framework, developed by Dr. Kylie Stevenson. Today, we're fortunate to have Kylie with us to provide an overview of the 4A framework and how libraries can use it to not only assess the capabilities of the audiences they engage with, but also as a tool for self-reflection and personal development. Dr. Kylie J. Stevenson is an associate investigator with the Centre for the Digital Child, an Australian Research Council funded centre of excellence, focusing on research about children aged birth to 8 years and digital technology. She has been researching families' lived experiences of technology since 2013. In 2022 and 2023, Kylie led a digital child research project partnering with the Lego Group Asia Pacific called Digital Safety and Citizenship Roundtables, conducting research with children and adult policymakers in India, Korea, and Australia. This resulted in 4 major reports and included the 4A framework. Kylie is also the co-author of the book Digital Media Use in Early Childhood, Birth to Six, and co-editor of the Routledge Companion to Digital Media and Children and Digitizing Early Childhood. She works at Murdoch University in Perth, Western Australia. Please join me in welcoming Kylie.
Hi, everyone. I'll just try and get my control of the slides as well. So thanks everyone for joining us today. I'm thrilled that the association has picked up the 4As. So I'm talking to you about the project Digital Safety and Citizenship Roundtables. And firstly, I don't know why that's going so fast. Sorry, everyone. For some reason, that's progressing without me touching anything. So I'm going to talk to you about this project, and I wanted to say something about digital citizenship because when we're talking about media and information literacy, that's a skill set which sits under a very broad umbrella. I'm really not sure why these slides are progressing, admin. And that includes a whole lot of skills, but it does include that media and information literacy. So we conducted this project in 2022 and 2023, as was said, in Korea, India, and Australia. And we conducted child roundtables with groups of children 3 to 5, 6 to 9, and 10 to 13. And then we also conducted research roundtables with adult stakeholders who were from industry, education, and also key government policy makers. You'll have to excuse, for some reason, the slides are progressing without me, so I'll just be flicking back and forth. So we asked the children to express their digital experience to us, and we did that through prompt cards, drawing, show and tell, and brick play, because we were partnered with the Lego Group and we had this Lego brick play. So after analysis of a whole lot of research data, so that included past research, current policy in all those 3 countries, children's input and adult stakeholder inputs, we arrived at these 4A principles. And essentially, they're ways to understand how we can support children's digital citizenship. So there are the 4As: attitude, ability, access, and awareness, and I'll take you through each of these now. So the first A is ability. So what is that? So that's the digital skills children and families have, including behaving well online and thinking critically. So you can see how media and information literacy sits there. How might we help support ability? Well, one way might be to create digital play spaces where families can learn and play together. The next A was awareness. So what is that? That's knowing about information available that can help develop digital skills. And one of the key outcomes was people just didn't know where to find that information. How might we help? Well, we could create a funny series of videos where people can find help with all kinds of digital problems, so pointing them to the right direction. So the next A is attitude, and that's how people think about children's online activities and abilities. And we need to support people to work through their different attitudes. How might we do that? Well, we could appoint a digital officer in a school or a library to help students, teachers, and parents with all things digital. And some locations are already doing that. The next A is access. And so what is that? So that's things that affect children's and adults' online use of their education about their online use. So access is a key issue that affects people's online use. How might we help that? Well, one way might be facilitating a group of children who can talk to adults and other children about safely accessing the digital world. Now, what we decided to do as well as part of this model is come up with one final recommendation. And that was for a control tower for digital citizenship. Now, that phrase, a control tower, actually came from our participants. So, one of our government policymakers. What is that? So, a digital citizenship control tower is where children and adults can make decisions together and communicate information together. How might we help do that? Well, we could facilitate a group of adults and children representing key locales and age groups coming together to help make decisions about things to do with digital citizenship. Now, if you'd like to find more out about the 4As, there is quite a lot of work that came out of this very intensive project. There were 4 key reports, which are all available open access. I often recommend people to this last report, which I've circled here. We actually produced a report for children in language accessible by children, which details the 4As. And so you might like to access those. The links are on the slides when you have access to those, and I'll also pop a link in the chat later on to where you can download the reports from. But finally, a last way we communicated these findings to the children, and it was so successful at a conference where we delivered this that we ended up including it in the adult report as well. Could someone take that back to the previous slide, please? Thank you. And so it's a chatterbox. So if anyone knows what a chatterbox is, it's one of those things you can construct. And in it, it has the 4As and the control tower and some of those recommendations for ways that you could apply the 4As. I've got a link there if you're looking at contacting me for further information, but I'm going to stay around on the Q&A and answer any questions that you have. Thanks so much for listening. I'm sorry for the automatic progression of the slides, and we'll try and fix that in the future. Bye for now.
Thank you, Kylie. What a wonderful presentation and really easy to unpack there. If you have questions for Kylie, like she said, just pop them into the Q&A and we'll be able to look at those a little bit later on. And the links that she shares into the chat will include in our post-session email out to you all, so you won't miss out on being able to connect with Kylie. And I also encourage you to add any reflections or thoughts into the chat as we go along that we can then share back to the network as well. Now, with a frame for how we might approach incorporating media and information literacy skills into our program, I'd like to introduce Anya and Libby, who will share examples of how our NSLA libraries are supporting children aged 0 to 4 years in developing foundational media and information literacies. So please join me in welcoming Anya and Libby, and I believe Anya will be speaking, Libby will be speaking with us first.
Thanks, Natasha. Hello, and thank you for joining Anya and I as we explore with you how libraries can support media and information literacy in the early years. Our presentation is going to focus on children not yet in formal education, that is 0 to 4, and ways that we can begin to think about our role in building strong foundations for their developing digital, media and information literacies, and to become informed, empathetic and active citizens. But first, we want to be frank with you. We're not experts, and this session won't pretend to have all the answers, but we hope we inspire you to take your own journey to understanding what libraries can do in this space and to do it. So during our research for this session, we found it hard to find examples of library practice on this topic. And this is where the 4A framework really helped. It guided our thinking about recent research and existing frameworks of child development, early literacy, and children's digital citizenship to identify things that we're already doing and consider ways of adapting them. As trusted professionals in libraries, we reassure families that we all need support to navigate the ebbs and flows of parenting from time to time. And we do this very well in our modelling and our messaging about early literacy. But what about digital literacy and the use of digital technologies? Anya and I concluded that to be most effective in this space, we need to have the courage to examine and challenge our personal views on where the digital and non-digital worlds begin, end, and intersect, and the skills children need to live in our complex, increasingly non-binary media and information-rich world. We hope you leave this session feeling very hopeful and optimistic about what you're already doing in the early years, and encouraged to think deeply and critically about ways you might layer digital and media and information literacy on or into your current and future programs and services. And when you do your research on the topic, please share it with your colleagues locally, but also across the sector on NSLA's dedicated and moderated library practice page, which you can find on its website. Anya.
Here I am. Hi, everyone. A little earlier, Kylie introduced us to the 4As. And for the early years, Libby and I decided to use it as a framework for reflective practice. So we're going to start with A for attitude. What is your attitude to the use of digital technologies with young children? The research and evidence tells us that birth to 2-year-olds don't need screen time. But we also know that older children, 2 to 4 years, can benefit from selective, high quality, limited access to screen time. But then Libby and I wonder, when digital technologies are all around young children and their use seeps into the everyday activities of caregivers, service providers, and the communities children live in, could our attitudes about the benefits or harms of screen time actually be excluding children from multimodal, multisensory play experiences for curiosity and learning? Might our attitudes lean towards binary thinking that really isn't so relevant for the 21st century? Are our attitudes caught up in good, bad, safe, harmful, entertaining, educational? But really, is anything in our everyday lives this clean cut anymore? So should we check our attitudes when planning for programming and ask instead, is this activity meeting the interests, developmental and learning needs of these families and their children? If the context and content for using digital technologies as a tool is engaging, educational, matches a child's developmental level and encourages conversation, then Libby and I say yes. So let's consider digital technologies as one of many tools to offer within multisensory developmental play. So Libby and I would like you to take a moment now to reflect. Do you need to check your attitudes to the internet and digital technologies? Do you need to check your attitudes to children as active learners with the right to contribute to decisions about their play experiences? How might your attitudes be affecting the messaging and modelling that you build into your library program and services for children and families? And how could you adapt your current messaging and modelling about play-based learning and the critical role of safe and caring child-adult relationships to also raise awareness about the role of digital technologies in growing children as active learners and active citizens?
Oops, gone too far. So we'd like to now have a bit more of a look at awareness and ability. So once we've examined our own attitudes and, if necessary, made adjustments, how do we raise awareness of parents, caregivers, and educators about the role of digital technologies and digital literacy in growing children as active learners and active citizens, and the important role that parents have in this growth? Digital literacy is defined in many ways, but it always includes the confidence and competencies to use digital tools with safety and privacy, to locate, select, organise and store information, to analyse information for cultural and social understanding, and use the information for communication, collaboration and creativity. So it provides a foundation for growing the critical thinking skills that children need to learn to create and safely communicate with digital tools and become active citizens of the 21st century. And libraries can raise awareness and the capability of adults about the functions and purpose of digital technologies and support them to develop skills and understanding that will facilitate their own and their child's media and information literacy. We can do this by using reliable, evidence-based research to create resources and model ways of using this information in everyday activities through our early years programming. And so today, Anya and I would like to share 3 resources that you could use or adapt for your own library to raise awareness and build ability in families of young children. The first is Lisa Guernsey's 3C framework, and the 3 Cs address digital technologies through the lens of content. So is it educational and developmentally appropriate? Context, does it encourage conversation and learning? And child, does it meet the needs of each individual child? And you can read more about the 3 Cs in her book Tap, Click, Read and on her website. There's also a 3C quiz for parents to check how mindful they are when using digital technology with children, which Anya and I are both looking forward to taking and sharing with our colleagues. The next 2 examples are featured in this slide and include a bookmark on the left and a tip sheet for families on the right. The bookmark was created by a project team in Libraries Tasmania for parents at Child and Family Learning Centres. It's a short summary of information from the ECA statement on young children and digital technologies and advice from the eSafety Commissioner. And it provides guiding principles and practical advice in an attractive and very useful format. The tip sheet on the right, the tip sheet for families' screen time with young children, is found in the Public Libraries Victoria Early Years Handbook for Public Libraries. And it includes information for adults and tips about things such as being a role model, teaching balance, setting limits, and being consistent. We can also share and model information in our early years programming too. Just as we message and model other information, we can suggest things like Adults putting their phone on silent and out of sight so that they're not a distraction while participating in our sessions with their child, or when reading with them at mealtimes and playtimes. They can talk to their child about what, why, and how they use their digital devices. They can make connections between information seeking, information use, and information creating with a variety of media. We can provide access to multimodal media to promote conversation and help build language skills in different contexts and for different purposes. We can also model interactive reading with books and suggest similar ways to use it with digital technologies. So, for example, to stimulate off-screen comments or questions, off-screen play, creation, imagination, and exploration. And very importantly, and not just for parents, maybe for us and our co-workers too, we can introduce the idea of self-regulation with on and off-screen activities for both adults and children.
That's it. Thank you, Libby. Much appreciated. And so, this is the final section of our presentation, and we've come to the fourth A, access. Meeting the access needs of individual children and their families requires us to reflect on our attitudes, our awareness, and our abilities. So as practitioners, in terms of attitude, we need to reflect upon our own attitudes towards the families who visit the library. We need to learn about the attitudes of parents and educators towards the library service and staff. And don't forget about the children's attitudes. We need to understand the attitudes of our communities towards the library, its services and programs. And we need to be aware of the attitudes of our own organisation and workplace towards play-based programs in the early years, using both digital and non-digital tools. That was attitude. With respect to awareness, what messages are we providing to parents about digital literacy and how it connects to 21st century digital citizenship? What messages are we sharing about the importance of adults as role models and lifelong learners? And how well are we modelling the use of digital technologies as tools to stimulate curiosity and support learning? Now, what about ability? Well, during our sessions, do we check in and talk about the use of digital technologies that we're using and the internet? Do we offer programs that encourage play experiences and exposure to a range of educational tools for different stages of child development? Are we providing multimedia experiences that assist children as they progress in motor skills, social skills, and language development? Do we actually involve children in playful activities that extend the digital experiences through listening and talking, singing, reading, drawing, and moving? And are we providing opportunities for self-regulation with both digital and non-digital media and experiences? So coming back to access, in our libraries, we provide access to trusted information and trusted information professionals. We provide access to educational and developmental playful experiences that encourage curiosity, exploration, interaction, and conversation. We offer warm and welcoming spaces and places that encourage everyone to learn and play together. And we provide access to multimedia resources and digital technologies alongside non-digital play and learn materials. So in conclusion, that's it for now from Libby and I. We thank you very much for being here today and exploring with us how we might use the 4A framework to think critically about planning delivering and evaluating the impact of our early years programs and services. Being here is evidence of your commitment to your ongoing professional development. We now invite you to consider how you might explore, by yourself and also with colleagues, one of the 4 A's and how it can impact your service design and delivery. Thank you. We now hand over to Natasha, who's going to facilitate questions and responses. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Anya and Libby, for a wonderful presentation and some great foundation for continuing these discussions in spaces in our own individual libraries. I am now going to get ready for the Q&A. And one thing that I took out of that presentation particularly is that the continued reassurance for families, the need to guide them in helping to balance the digital and the non-digital worlds, and that important role of role modeling that behavior. Too often, I think we sometimes say, put down the phone or put down the device, but then anytime we've got a free moment, we're catching up. Unbeknownst to the children in our lives, that it's probably the only time we've had to sit down and look at our devices for the day. Well, now it's up to you. I haven't seen too many questions coming through the Q&A chat. So if you've got some questions that you'd like to put forward to our panelists, either about the frameworks that have been shared today while Kylie is with us, also the 3 additional frameworks that have been shared by Anya and Kylie, if that resonated with you. While you're having a think, I'll just kick off in connection with this webinar and your registration. The opportunity to provide questions was part of that registration process. So collectively looking at those responses, participants today have asked libraries Participants have asked how libraries can play a central role in fostering media literacy skills in young children. I think that the presentation so far has provided some good ideas to think on. This includes considering how libraries can integrate media literacy programs into existing services, how to adapt them for different age groups, for parents and caregivers, and how to leverage partnerships, particularly with external providers like national and statewide organisations, such as educators, speech pathologists, to enhance these initiatives. So I'm going to first touch base with our panelists, Libby and Anya. In addition to what you've showcased in your presentation today, can you share any learnings or reflections in connection to those questions that you came across in your preparations for today?
Sure. One thing that I'm really passionate about is children's voices. So I was really excited to hear Kylie's presentation talking about children's roundtables, and I look forward to I don't know, getting on to Kylie and saying, tell me more details about that. But certainly one of the spaces I go to for resources, or 2 places actually around children's voices, NAPCAN, NAPCAN, for the National Association for the Prevention of Cruelty and Neglect of Children. They have terrific online resources, and they do some really beautiful work in listening to children and then ensuring those voices, those ideas, those feelings are heard. But another useful resource I've used over many years is from Innovative Resources. And so that was in the early days headed up by St. Luke's, but now it's just called Innovative Resources, and we'll make sure that the link to that is available.
I'll just step in here too. So a couple of other things which I'm sort of toying with, how can we use it, is many of you will probably be very aware of State Library of WA and their Better Beginnings program, and they have this fabulous thing that is a home literacy calendar. And each day of the week, they offer suggestions for things for families to do at home. Under talk, read, play, sing, I've forgotten something, and STEM. And I'm just thinking that kind of thing, could we use something like that to add in a little bit about raising awareness of parents about what they might do with their digital technologies and their children, just so that it's a prompt and it makes it fun and they can have that challenge, you know, how many things have we ticked off? So I think for parents as well, you know, we talk about play being really important, and it is for children, but sometimes we need to make it playful for our parents as well. So anything that we can use, that we can adapt and share to raise awareness and make it playful, I think is worth pursuing.
Oh, Libby, we've just lost you. That-
Oh,
We just lost your last sentence. It was the really good bit. It was all good, but that was the summation of it all.
oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
No, good. Okay, I don't know what happened there. I think it was just about being playful and raising awareness.
Yeah, I think
Thanks.
that element of playfulness for family members or any adults accompanying children. Certainly, a lot of remote work I've done in the Northern Territory. It's really hard to encourage family members to leave the preschool classroom when it's ready to start the formal learning. And so much of that is that people haven't had a chance to play because
Yeah.
life has been about the Maslow's basic needs. And so it's a real joy, in fact, to include family members of all ages in the playful nature of learning that we can offer in libraries.
And
Thanks, Anya. Oh, sorry.
sorry, I was
Libby.
just going to add in there too, like I came across a quote, and I'm paraphrasing, from Mem Fox the other day, and she was talking about trying to encourage parents to read with their children. And she said, when I talk to parents about reading to their children, I don't want it to sound like medicine. I want it to sound like chocolate. And that's what I think we need to do with our parents, with media and information literacy and our children.
Thank you, ladies. I do see members of our NSLA network also online, and the question has come up for any other examples of library programs being offered in public libraries that you might be able to share. I know that when Anya and Libby, sorry, were doing their scan, a lot of the programs in libraries are focusing quite strongly on those early foundational literacies of talking, singing, reading, playing, and that digital aspect is still quite new. And so um, just wanted to do a quick check if there was any other examples that you collectively, if someone on the networks out there wants to throw something in, have a think. While you're having a think about that, I might just pitch one out to Kylie. While we've got you here, I was interested in any trends that came out of the research that you did with the children, things that you learned that might be applicable to this discussion about modeling with families, with parents. Any tidbits you can share? I know it's probably all in those reports we need to go look at, but a highlight or two that you could share with us.
Yeah, look, one thing that was really key that the children really wanted adults to understand is that they don't think about their life as online and offline.
Yeah.
It's actually a life, and it's thoroughly blended into their everyday life and their home life. And so often we think, we'll take them offline and we'll do something else, but what children really do is they weave in and out of the online experience and the offline experience. And we had a fantastic example in another project, which is detailed in the Digital Media in Early Childhood book, in which kids were playing a game called Skylanders. And they had all their figures. They had friends come over. they would engage with the game online, but then they would at the same time be playing the character, moving their characters around. Then they'd go out to the backyard and run around for a while. Then they'd come back. And it was a great example of them living their life completely blended online and offline. So, I'd really encourage, parents and anyone else to start thinking about how kids actually see their lived experience as not kind of binary, if you like.
Mm.
The other thing I want to say, which is parents ask me all the time, and this is really in answer to a question here about anti-technology fears. Parents ask me all the time, they stop me in car parks, whatever, when they find out what I do and say, what do I do? And what I always say to them is, when you were teaching your children about the value of books, you didn't just give a child a book and go, there you go, 1 year old, you'll work it out. You sat with the children, you gave them age appropriate books and talked them, read through the book until they were able to handle the book themselves, and then you increased the degree of difficulty as they went along. And that's the same way for parents to think about technology. Even if they're anti-technology, it's a resource the same way, a learning resource the same way a book is, but you support your child to develop their skills in age-appropriate ways as they go along. Another of my colleagues uses the metaphor of the beach in the same way. You don't just take your child to the beach and go, you'll work it out how to swim. You safely nurture them until they're very competent. So, if we're talking to parents about technology, that's one way, a couple of metaphors you can use to help them understand why it's important for them to be by their child's side as they're learning their media and information literacy skills.
Thanks for those insights, Kylie. And I think that helps, as you've mentioned, address some of those questions, comments coming through the Q&A chat there. And I believe that's something that we can explore a bit more in detail in our responses back to attendees today following this session. Time's getting close, and it's amazing how quickly it flies when you plan these things, and then when you're living them in delivery time. One aspect of the question that I posed earlier was about how to connect with, or the benefit in connecting with external providers. And I think having Kylie here and looking at the work of the Digital Child, considering those other organizations that are doing these things and looking to them for those parent messages, for those tips, and then finding the ones that are going to work best, using the 4A framework potentially as a starting point to think about those messages that you can share back to parents. An example of that is being done with the young people and families team here at State Library of Queensland, as they're looking for ways to incorporate that media aspect into the early years First Five Forever program here. And that they are working with external organizations to increase those opportunities to facilitate media and information literacy skills. Recently, they hosted a webinar with an organization named Screen Sanity Australia, who provided some really good tips just about how to use those screens at home and how to manage some of those conversations around when and why and how. And I think considering those sorts of resources, organizations, coupled with things that are coming out from the reports, like Kylie has said, the conversation with children and finding that nice balance, we'll begin to see those influences and learnings filtering into programming that's already happening for for families in the early years in libraries. So like we said, this is the start of a conversation, and many people are in different places across the board in taking these things on and trying to connect families with ways to help manage media and information literacy. We've probably got time for one more question, or any other input from my NSLA. Sorry, Wayne, that was Screen Sanity Australia. And we'll pop that into the chat as well. Uh, anyone else from our network there who's online who can think of examples that they may have come across, particularly in the early years? That's okay. We will continue to grow our list, and as we work with our extended networks through our public libraries, the programs that we come across will continue to add. And we might need to do another webinar series to give you an update on those things that are happening out in library spaces across Australia. I think it's probably time to get ready to wrap up. Let me just check the chat and make sure nothing came through there. Great. Well, with that being done, as we wrap up today's session, I'd just like to thank everyone for their participation today. It's inspiring to see such engagement around these critical topics, and we've had great attendance online. So I hope that this has been of value and triggered some thoughts and reflections that you can take back to your own practice. But before we conclude, let's just take a moment to think about some of those insights. Anya and Libby invited you to consider how you might apply one of those 4 A's: attitude, ability, awareness, or access, both individually or with your colleagues, to guide the design and delivery of services for the young people and families in your spaces. If you've had a thought about that, you could throw that into the chat. We'd also invite you to think of one word that might describe today's session and pop that into the chat as you start to say goodbye and wave as you head out the door. And if you'd also like to share a takeaway that you'd like to explore further. I see lots of really good links, and I'm really keen to learn a bit more about the 3C framework as well. And lastly, if you're interested in building media and information literacy skills in primary and secondary students, there's still time to register for our Tuesday, Kindy to Year 6, and Wednesday's Year 7 to Year 12 sessions. Just note that the introductory content shared today and Kylie's presentation will be repeated as part of those sessions, so you may wish to join and jump in for the examples later in that chat. We look forward to working together to empower families with young children to nurture critical thinkers who'll grow into informed citizens ready to tackle truth decay and contribute to an inclusive democratic society. Together, we can help shape a utopian future filled with possibilities and opportunities to counteract the alternative. For the book lovers out there, a bleak dystopia limited by misinformation, ignorance, and polarized views. Thank you all for your participation today, and we look forward to connecting with you through our extended networks. If everyone wants to jump on and wave goodbye, our panelists, as people get ready to head out the door.